But the specific output, so the other question we get is, yeah, well, what is it? What's it going to look like? What are you going to produce? And so what we want to get is a plan, an integrated management plan that describes PNCIMA's regional characteristics. So we know what's there, what it looks like, an ecosystem-based management approach that respects social, cultural, economic, and ecological health of the area, marine spatial plans, identification of various agencies' roles and responsibilities, and I think what's really important is an enduring process that can provide ongoing input into oceans management. So even at the end of this process, we produce a plan. What we really want in addition to that is this ongoing enduring process where we can get people's views and inputs and ideas. And then, of course, an implementation strategy to make this real. So, for those of you that were at the Richmond Forum in 2009, there's been a lot of work that's gone on over the last year. Since then, we've released the proceedings, the presentations, the videos. There's a new website, which I hope you've all seen. It's really great. The Challenges and Opportunities discussion paper is available. In fact, I think it's in here. Yes?
Yep.
And so if you haven't seen that, it's a great document, because when you ask yourself, or we ask you the question, okay, here's a hint for the test that's coming up. What are your issues? That document is, it's nice because it kind of lays out what we think the issues are, and it'd be nice to know if you agree or if there's big gaps or what you think is more important. We've held a number of meetings with different interested and affected parties, and those have been fascinating to attend. Started a socioeconomic and cultural overview and assessment report, and there was actually a workshop not too long ago up in Prince Rupert on that. And most important for today is the draft engagement strategy, process overview, and the context document. So those three documents you have, they look identical, they're different, and it's the engagement strategy that Neil's going to talk to you about today. And so here's our ambitious roadmap. Where are we going? So in addition to what the products are, what we think we're going to get out of this, here's kind of the time frame that we're hoping to do it in. And it is quite ambitious. And so I think as we go forward, we need to keep in mind that the time frames and what we can reasonably do within that time period. So in 210, development of a work plan for the resource plans. How are we going to pay for what we would want to do? The engagement strategy, which we're trying to finalize very soon. Terms of reference for the planning process, and the definition of ecosystem-based management. In 211, we'll be moving into ecological and socioeconomic objectives indicators, and identifying strategies and management measures for achieving those objectives. And then in 212, magically, we're going to have a draft integrated management plan, which we hope to have ready for submission to the minister and to other relevant government agencies. So that's the general overview. If you've got some questions, great. But I want to make sure that you have all met Neil Davis, who's the PNCIMA coordinator, and we'll be talking to you in more detail about the engagement strategy and what your views are about that.
Good. Thanks, Rebecca. So any questions of a general nature? Larry, did you want to add anything from a First Nations perspective? No. As partners in the implementation. So any questions of a general nature about PNCIMA? For those of you that are interested in background context and don't have it, there is a document. It looks like the engagement strategy. It's called the Context for the PNCIMA Initiative. So it talks about the Oceans Act and the Ocean Strategy and all that kind of stuff. And there's a number of documents at the front that fill in some gaps as well. So if there's no questions, then we'll jump right into the specific presentation on the engagement strategy. Okay, and if things come up later, we're going to open it right up at the end as well. So if you think of something over the course of the next couple of hours and you want to bring it up at the end, feel free to do so. Yeah.
So presentation number 2. So what I'm going to do is just actually go through and introduce you to the document that we want to spend the rest of the day or the rest of the afternoon talking with you about, which is the engagement strategy. And I thought that what I'd do to start is give you a bit of background around where this document has come from, both in sort of the longer term, the past year, but also maybe share with you a little bit about what we've been hearing in other community meetings to date, so that you have a sense of what other people have been saying. And then I can go from there and just introduce you to the different pieces of the engagement strategy itself and tell you about what happens beyond this meeting in terms of our next steps. So in the longer term, this document has been informed by a number of different sort of iterations in terms of engagement with different interest groups. So if we go back in time to last spring, many of you know that we held a forum in Richmond where we sort of had a public launch to this planning process, and we began a conversation there, among other things, about what are the sort of the important things that we need to know about how people should be engaged on this initiative. So out of that, we got some initial ideas about what an engagement strategy should look like. We followed those up with a number, including the Central Coast Regional District. That's from a presentation earlier last week. Anyway, there were a number of meetings that we held with different interest groups, whether they be local governments or specific interest groups, etc., to sort of follow up on the forum and provide an opportunity for a bit more detailed discussion around how people can be involved in this. Out of all of that, in the fall, we drafted sort of a brief version of what you're looking at now. And it outlined a few key components of how we saw interested parties, First Nations, and governments all working together in this initiative. And we brought, this is sort of captures maybe the centerpiece of that short document. We brought that short document out for review with a multi-sectoral group of interested parties to get some initial feedback on what our ideas were and whether we were headed in the right direction. And we've used this as sort of the basis for sort of building something a little bit bigger and more detailed, which is what you have before you in this engagement strategy. So in terms of what you're seeing here, it's the Integrated Oceans Advisory Committee on the left, which Alex mentioned at the outset. So this is intended to be sort of that broad, multi-sectoral group where all parties are having a discussion together about the recommendations that are going to come out of this integrated management planning process. And the intention is that these other bodies, the planning office in the middle, that one in particular is playing a bit of a sort of a technical and a coordinating and an administrative role in supporting the work of this planning process. So it's doing things like convening meetings, writing documents like this, and other things that allow this to move forward from day to day. Also on the right of the screen is what we've termed a governance framework, and that's a recognition that there are a couple of places where First Nations, the federal government, and the provincial government are having discussions at sort of a strategic level about the direction of how oceans are managed. That's where those discussions are happening. So between First Nations and federal agencies, that's where you find that bilateral coordination steering committee, which is what, again, Alex had referenced earlier in our meeting here. So that's a relationship that allows us to collaborate and provide some guidance and direction. It also provides guidance to the planning office in terms of directing their work. We also recognize that or have forums where federal agencies talk to the provincial government about how oceans are managed. So there are these different places where strategic level discussions are happening which can inform this planning process. Now you'll notice that the lines to the province and around the province are dotted. So to date the province has chosen to be an observer to the PNCIMA initiative. They do